Dimitri? Is Dimitri Salina? All right, when he shows up, where's the champ? Oh, here we go. Ladies and gentlemen, a big round of applause for the champ, Dimitri Salina. When they talk about a guy that represents Jewish pride, here's this young man that puts on the gloves, tremendous record, and a tremendous commitment to the Jewish people. And not only to the Jewish people, to all humanity. He's a hell of a guy.
It's a great honor to be here. I know Mr. Sugerman for a few years. He's a tremendous man that, as we see in the video, travels from world to world, and he's been my supporter for many, many years. From local fights to the big fights, we were just recently in England together, and this is one of the corner jackets from that fight to show Mr. Sugerman that he is in my corner, and I thank him and I appreciate him. Thank you. God bless you. And the real champion of the world, Mr. Myron Sugerman.
Okay. Sit down because you're taking away my thunder. It's a very distinguished looking crowd, and there's one fabulous table, a number of fabulous tables that I'm looking at. And this is the only place in America where they're going to have a metal detector on the way out instead of on the way in. First of all, I think it's, besides my introducing Dimitri Salina, it's only fair and only right that I introduce the president of our company, Herbert Kallenberg. Will Mr. Kallenberg stand up? How about a round of applause for Herbert? Herbie, I only have one question. I'm thinking, how the hell did you get in here? Did you pay? Sit down. I want to see a show of hands. I was debating tonight exactly what I'm going to say to this crowd, because it's after all, it's an eclectic group that you got here tonight. It's very eclectic. It's more than just eclectic. It's electric. But I want to see a show of hands. I'm going to give you a choice of what I'm going to say tonight, but I really want to see what you people want to hear. The first thing that I want you to tell me by a show of hands is how many here would like to hear stories with a Jewish theme. Would you please raise your hands? That's very nice. Okay. And now I'd like to see a show of hands. How many of you would like to hear stories about horse thieves and bootleggers and moonshiners and gangsters and mobsters and prize fighters? Well, supposing I take both one and I take two and I merge it into one. And I tell you stories that represent both Jewish themes and the other side. First of all, Dimitri Salina was up here tonight, and I appreciated his coming and so forth, which reminds me that years ago, boxing was an extremely popular sport as far as the Jews were concerned. And in Newark, New Jersey, we had a referee that his name was, he was a good friend of Sugar's, a good friend of my father, may he rest in peace. His name was Jaime Kugel. In those days, when fighters fought, it was the referee that made the decision. So there was a big fight one night in Jersey City at the Velodrome. And in those days, many fighters, so not to concern their parents, would change their names. So that night, Abe Bain, who was Jewish, very good friend of our father, and a very good friend of Abe Green, may he rest in peace, who was my father's dearest friend. He fought at the Velodrome against Vince Dundee, but Vince Dundee was actually Italian. But he took on an Irish name, and he fought that night, and he beat the crap out of Baby Bain. But at the end of the fight, Jaime Kugel, never to be accused of being fair-minded, raised the hand of both of them and called it a draw. Well, the Italians in the crowd that night destroyed the Velodrome. There was never another fight in the Velodrome. But there was another fight that took place in Newark, New Jersey, at Laurel Gardens, which Jerry Kugel, Jaime's son, told me that one night his father was refereeing a fight, and sure enough, the guy on the card that night was a fellow by the name of Greenberg. So Greenberg in the first round gets knocked down, and so Jaime, as the referee, starts to count 1, 2. He says to him, "Get up, you dumb Jew. Don't you see I'm giving you a slow count?" He says, I changed my name, and I didn't want my mother to know that I'm fighting, and I took an Irish name. He says, but really I'm Italian. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you're out. Presidents. I introduced you to Kallenberg. I had a president prior to Kallenberg. His name was Max Putty Hinkes. Max Putty Hinkes, some of you from Newark will remember, was an old-time gangster. And he was down and out on his luck. He got when he reached old age, he had gambled away his whatever he could gamble. And so Sid the Cigar comes to me one day and he says, you know, it don't look good with them other guys that we don't take care of our own. So he says, give him a job. We gave him a job. We made him the president of the company, and he sat at the desk. And he, on a rare occasion, would answer a telephone and make a phone call. So one day I says to him, Putty, do me a favor. Call Rabbi Kazanets. It's on a Friday afternoon. He calls up Rabbi Kazanets, and he says, he's not in right now. He's checking the Erev. No, the girl tells him. He's not in, he's checking the Erev. I says, where is he, Putty? He says, he's checking for an Arab. Putty and I get into a court case. I don't know how the hell it happened. Got a state case. You forgot your cue, Kallenberg. Were you sleeping? Anyways, I couldn't take the stand, so Putty takes the stand as the president of the company. So the prosecutor says to him, Mr. Hinkes, he says, you're the president of the company? He says, I am. And he says, how much do you make? He says, I make $10,000 a year. And he says, and what do you do for that money? He says, what do I do for that money? That's a good question. He says, once in a while, I'll go with the little guys, Pee-wee and Timmy, I'll go to the post office with them if they need someone to go with them. But most of the time, I'll just sit in the office. I may answer a telephone, and we taught him how to say momentito until one of the Spanish-speaking girls could pick up the phone. One day, he's on the phone with a guy, and he's got an argument going with him, and he says to me, this dumb SOB, I'm saying momentito to him, and he doesn't understand what the hell I'm saying. I said, give me the phone. It's Nakayama from Japan. Anyways, they asked him the question, and what do you do? And he says, really, I'm an old man. He says, I read the newspaper, and when I get tired, he says, I go to sleep. I says to myself, did you listen to this guy? We're facing a state charge, and he's telling the prosecutor, as the president of the company, goes to sleep. So the prosecutor says to him, he says, Mr. Hinkes, to be quite honest with everybody in the courtroom, he says, you really, as president of the company, don't do very much, do you? So Putty forgets his cue, and he looks at the prosecutor, he gets offended, he gets insulted. He says, let me ask you a question, smart tuffus. He says, for $10,000 a year, would you break your tuffus?